I'm Jamie Seeker, and this is What It Takes. Each episode, I sit down with real business owners to talk about their journey, the wins, the challenges, and everything in between. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to another episode of What It Takes, where we dive deep into the stories behind business success. Today, I'm so excited to speak with Nick Jain, CEO of IdeaScale, the world's largest innovation SaaS company. Nick is not only a leader in harnessing AI for business innovation, but also someone who knows how to balance high-level leadership with personal interests like poker, running, and more. So we'll be discussing how he embraced AI before it became a trend and how he maintains balance while leading such a cutting-edge company. So Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jamie. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So why don't you just start off by telling us about the beginnings of IdeaScale and how it became to be the world's largest innovation platform?
Sure. So IdeaScale started about 15 years ago by two guys, Rob Hohen and Viv Bhaskaran. And right around that time, it was President Obama's presidency, and President Obama came out and said, "Hey, government is kind of antiquated. Governments have not been innovating. We have these, agencies that have been around for 200 years. It's time for them to step into the 21st century." And as President Obama said, governments need to innovate. Rob and Viv, our two co-founders, came up with the realization that, hey, if they're going to innovate, they need tools to do so. So they built IdeaScale. They founded IdeaScale as the software platform that helps these large, complex organizations innovate. We started off kind of with that government President Obama initiative, but then have since expanded into pretty much every industry. And now we have clients in dozens of different countries. I have been here now for about 2 years as CEO. And what our software does really effectively is it helps large organizations gather ideas from a diverse array of people, from senior people, junior people, people on the other side of the world, rank those ideas in a very social way. You can almost think of it like a TikTok for ideas. So instead of funny dance videos coming across your screen, it is the most upvoted, most viral ideas that are relevant to your organization, whether that be private sector, public sector, nonprofit, etc.
I love that. What a great idea. So you guys kind of were early advocates for AI in business, right? What led you to embrace AI so early, and how has it transformed IdeaScale?
Sure. I'll say there's two things. One is if you're working at a tech company, it's always fun just to try out new technologies. That's part of our job. It's part of who we are, right? My engineers are trying new programming languages. There's all these tools my marketing team is always trying out. So that's number one. At a tech company, you're always trying new things. But number two, for me personally, there was this weird crystallizing moment where I realized all these AI tools are amazing and we need to go all in on them. And it was specifically happened last February. My wife and I are in Amsterdam visiting some friends, and she's up in the hotel room just finishing up some work. I'm down in the lobby grabbing a quick beer and a snack. So I'm sitting there, beer and a slice of pizza in one hand and a laptop in front of me. And I realized, hey, we don't have a social media account. I know nothing about social media. Let's go create a social media account on LinkedIn for us. We had an account, but we had no presence. We hadn't posted in like 2 years on it. So I said, look, I also want to play around with ChatGPT. So I pulled up ChatGPT and asked it to help me design our social media profiles, the content of our social media. And me, in about half an hour, not being a social media expert, and having a beer in one hand and pizza and kind of in the other, greasy fingers, was able to build out an entire year-long social media profile and plan, an actual post with images, etc. And so I did this, and whatever. We went out to dinner with our friends, and I started evaluating how this was working. Like a week later, a month later, and realized this AI-generated tool had allowed me to do the job of a full social media marketing manager in half an hour. And that's extraordinary power, right? When you can create a full human being's year's worth of work in 30 minutes and being a non-expert. And so that moment made me realize, hey, these tools are extraordinarily powerful. They can make us much more efficient and more effective. And it's one of the few mandates, like formal top-down mandates I've made at IdeaScale, which is every department needs to start using these tools aggressively, whether it be the marketing and sales departments. My software engineering departments have been using Copilot tools, which are the AI coding tools. And it's just allowed us to be extraordinarily more efficient as an organization than I think we would have been without these tools.
Wow, that's amazing. So you were sold right off the bat, your first try.
Yes,
That's
indeed.
amazing. That's amazing. So How then do you balance AI to enhance innovation, like you talked about with those initiatives, without losing that human touch in the process? Because it sounds like you still have a full team. So you're utilizing these tools and the power of them, like you said, but you still have that human side of things. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll break it into two pieces. We use AI in two ways. Number one, we use it internally to run better as a company to make people more effective. And number two, we've incorporated it into our software. In terms of running internally, I think there's an important thing to realize that AI today, at least where it exists today, and this may not be true in 5 years or 10 years, doesn't replace human beings. It makes human beings more effective at what they can do. And I'll give a very practical example. I suck at art. Okay, I can't draw things. I can't make pretty PowerPoint. So what would I do as CEO of the company? I would say, hey, I need this image. Here's a rough description of it. Go send it off to my art or graphics team, and they'll make a cool image or a graphic or website or whatever, right? Now I can just type that, and what's in my head, even poorly articulated, can now be converted into a beautiful image that I can rapidly prototype. And that's me as a non-expert. Now imagine what my expert graphics designers can do who already understand elements of design, right? They can rapidly create variations of images that each would normally take them 3-4 hours to do. Now they can have 100 variations of it in minutes, right? So AI has not replaced human beings at IdeaScale. Rather, it has made people who are bad at something like me able to do something that we could not otherwise do without help and without the help of somebody else. So I can now do things that I couldn't do before. And number two, it's made people who are already good at what they do extraordinary, both in terms of quality and in terms of speed. And that has allowed us to, we didn't lose anything in the human element. We just became much more effective and efficient as individuals working for the larger purpose of IdeaScale.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually something that we've been talking about for a really long time within our company and seeing hesitancy with other companies and our owners, some of our clients in using these tools is that fear of replacing that human element. So I think you articulated that just beautifully. I love it. So we heard about all these benefits, right? What about some challenges? Did you guys face significant challenges in AI implementation, and how did you navigate through those?
Sure. So I think the biggest change that we have, there's two challenges that we've encountered. Number one, specifically for software tool, AI tools for our coders, we sometimes the AIs were trained on bad pieces of code or old styles of code. Like imagine training AI on Shakespearean English and trying to use that to write modern English, right? Technically, it's right, but it's kind of weird and it's probably a little bit antiquated. And that we observed in the first two generations of AI coding tools, that they were using what would have been considered best practices 5 or 10 years ago, but software is such a rapidly evolving field that best practices 10 years ago are actually not great practices today. And so we don't want AI teaching our junior engineers or spitting out code that is outdated, or it still works, but it's not best practice today. So that's number one, where the tools were trained on data that's a little bit outdated, and therefore they spit out outdated things. The good news is, particularly in the software engineering side of the world, people realized that was a problem really quickly. And as kind of the Gen 3 tools or Gen 4 tools, I've lost track of which generation, come out, those are now much more effective and truly holding it at best practices. So they're actually spitting out world-class code, which makes our engineers obviously much more effective and effectual. The second challenge was the error rate. And this is more a human element of it. And what I mean that is, AIs make mistakes. The technical term is they hallucinate, they make up stuff, or they may do weird stuff where they'll say, we had a social media post where it was, I think they wished the AI posted a happy gay pride week on the wrong week, right? So that was a mistake that happened. There's two kind of issues with that. Number one, it kind of decreased the confidence of human beings that, hey, should we be using AI tools when an AI tool made a mistake? That's bad because you don't want the organization to lose faith in these tools because of mistakes. But then secondly is a more philosophical one where, yes, AI makes mistakes, but so do human beings. And actually, when you look at the comparison of mistakes that AI devices make versus human beings, AI still outperforms. So human beings make tons of social media mistakes, but we let them have a slide. And so I feel very strongly about this, that yes, AI tools are not perfect, But it's okay because we can't measure them against perfection. That's an unfair standard. We should measure them against human beings. And on average, in almost every field of endeavor, at least for low and mid-level tasks, these AI tools have already gotten to a point where they're actually better than human beings on average quality and lower mistake rate. And that's an extraordinary potential. But you have to kind of overcome the standard that people hold these machines to, right? Everyone wants to believe that machines are infallible and perfect. They're not, and that's okay.
Yeah. Well, and I think you being in that industry and coming to that conclusion of it's okay, it's a lot harder to convince somebody who already doesn't have the trust and has already maybe made up their mind about not going that direction to not give them that
Well,
they're
one
not,
funny
it's
thing
not
about
okay
that.
for them, right? Like they're like, you can't make any mistakes. We can't go that direction.
But the funny thing is, that's not just true outside the industry. That's a problem I encounter in my own company, right? So
Do
imagine,
you?
only
Oh,
we're a
wow.
technology company, but so our engineers and people on the technical side understand that machines always make some small amount of errors, right? There will be bugs in your code. You go to Google, Gmail will once in a while have a broken link or something, right? And that's Google. They'll still have bugs. I think people on the technical side of the world understand that quite a bit more, but I obviously have marketing people and sales people and product people and HR people. And I think there's a greater expectation amongst them that, hey, our software works perfectly or somebody else's software works perfectly. I actually have one of the funny distinction things I have between clients is some of my clients understand how technology works, right? Because they understand, hey, stuff breaks. That's okay. It's more how quickly somebody fixes it or how bad the mistake is. If it's a typo, who really cares? If it launches a missile, that's a problem, right? um, so it's not unique to just people outside the industry. That's something even technology companies struggle with because we have a lot of non-technical people who don't appreciate that machines are not perfect. No machine has ever been perfect, right? I once worked at a Coke factory, and once in a while, once out of every 10,000 cans would come out all dented. That's okay. It happens. Actually, it's one
Yeah,
about a million, but one out of about a million. But that's
sure.
okay. It's still
Yeah.
right. 999,999 times.
Absolutely. And I think some of those opinions, the more that they're educated about it, the more that they look at it from that perspective, they can start to see the bigger picture and see how the benefits far outweigh some of those negatives. But you talked about the rapidly evolving tech landscape, and I want to talk about that a little bit because you are still continuing to stay ahead of that curve. And obviously, identifying AI early on was a huge part of that. And now the rest of us are kind of catching up with that. But how do you stay there once you've, once the world does catch up with that and sees how they can use that to their benefit? There's still a curve happening and it's still moving forward. So how do you navigate through that?
So we have a huge advantage in this area. Like what our product is, it's an innovation product. It helps other companies innovate better. And it's actually built into our DNA as a company that, hey, if we're out there helping others innovate better, we sure as hell better be innovative ourselves. It is wired into kind of our DNA from day one as an organization that good is never good enough, that we can't just be happy today with what we're achieving, but rather we need to be getting better each day. Kind of, I go and tell my customers, if you're not innovating, just remember your competitor certainly is. I maintain that mentality. We maintain that mentality in IdeaScale every day that we need to innovate in every aspect of what we do. Just because our marketing department is good doesn't mean it can't get better and try out new technologies or new marketing campaigns. Or just because our product is good doesn't mean we can't add new cooler features or remove other bad features. It is truly, if we believe in innovation, which we do as an organization, that's literally why we exist. That's why with the service we provide our customers, we really care about being innovative ourselves. And there's lots of best practices, technologies, tools, we can get into that. But it's not difficult for us to try and be innovative because that's what we do. That's what we are as an organization. It's literally in our mission statement.
I love it. Practice what you preach, right?
Mhm.
So could you then share a time when your innovation strategy didn't work out as planned?
Sure. So I think it'll be a bit of a weird example, right? We believe in innovation. It's part of who we are. But there's a big difference. There's often a gap between the theory of something or the strategy of something and the execution of something, right? And sometimes that gap is real and sometimes it's perceived. Um, in software, sometimes you have to make a decision that you're going to do big projects. And what those big projects entail is there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the background, in the technology side, on the product side, on the engineering side, but nothing seems to happen for like 3 months or 6 months or 12 months, right? And so even though your strategy is to innovate and you are in the background working on something cool and innovating and getting better, no one sees it. And it feels viscerally to many people, even including folks on the technical product side, that, hey, have we come to a standstill? Have we stopped getting better? Right? And that's a problem we often encounter because, yes, we have a lot of small continuous changes, as does any good software company, coming out all the time. Sometimes we have these big game-changing features that it makes us look like we stopped for a while. Or both externally, customers may think, hey, we've stopped doing things, or internally, people may even get that feeling because everyone likes to see shiny new bells and whistles coming out every week. No one likes to wait 6 months or 9 months and then just something appear, or maybe to not appear. And there's a lot more risk in that too. So it's less that we have failed ever at innovating. It is sometimes we've encountered a lot of internal emotional and external emotional management challenges at the rate at which we innovate, because sometimes innovation is nice, small, continuous, and sometimes it is what's the term? Aperiodic or apunctual, where it'll just spike once in a while and go flat, spike once in a while, and that's okay. Right, but you have to. It requires a delicate emotional balance and communication strategy when you're taking that approach.
Well, that's a really huge takeaway, I think, for any business owner. And whether we're talking about strategy for innovation or strategy for business decisions or anything, it's kind of a universal thing dealing with perception versus reality. And I love what you said about that. That's really unique point of view. I haven't really heard anybody talk about that yet in our podcast. Is there is a way that we think about things and feel about things, and sometimes we make decisions based on that. But we also need to look at the reality of it, take the emotion out, look at what's actually happening, and maybe there is that human element there. Sometimes your gut is right, and sometimes you need to go with the facts and to look at the difference between your perception versus reality and figure out in your strategy how to move forward. That's a great
I did not
observation.
come up with your concept, by the way. I think it was a Daniel Kahneman won a Nobel Prize for describing, I think, type 1 and type 2 thinking, which is like gut feel, initial emotional reaction, versus type 2 is like slow down. Let's use all that gray matter that that God or evolution has given us to think through what is the reality of the situation rather than just my gut feel.
Yeah, and it's a good marrying of the two, right? Like sometimes your gut, there's something that we can't explain through the data, but it is measurable. And we see that, hey, time and time again, our human decision making, however we got there, proves to be the right path for us. And in other times, it has been problematic. It has gotten in the way of it. And so it's knowing how to discern between the two and when to marry them and move forward.
There's an interesting thing I once read, a research study I once read from psychology, which is that people who rely on gut feelings or actually make better decisions, but people who are guided by let me rephrase. People who start from a point of gut feelings may make better decisions than those who totally ignore their gut feelings or intuition. However, those who actually make decisions purely based on gut feelings tend to make terrible decisions in life. So yes, there is knowledge in that gut feeling or that human intuition, and we should tap that. But before we rely solely on that gut feeling, let's pause and think about, use that gray matter to add to or complement those gut feelings.
Absolutely. I agree. And I've seen it, that checks out, right? We all know those kind of people, and sometimes they hit it big, that's a perfect transition to talk about some of your hobbies. You like to play poker, run, battle rap. I love that.
I don't compete. I just watch, by the way.
Okay. So it's a hobby of watching it. I was going to get to that. So how do these things help you maintain a balance at CEO? Because poker players, there are different types of poker players, and we see people that win big and lose big. Right. And we see people that play conservatively. They play the odds. They play exactly how you're supposed to play, right? The rules of it. And I know personally, I've been to poker tables, and you're pissed when somebody doesn't follow the rules at your table. You're like, come on, you're ruining it for everybody here. But at the same time, it's so exciting when they do. And they hit it big and we're all cheering for him, right? Because they're like, nobody should have done that and you just did it and you were right. So talk to me about that side of things and how that, I
Sure.
mean, I can see it all applying in your industry and your work life as well, but let's talk a little
Yeah.
bit about your personal interests.
Sure. So look, I work really hard, right? But anybody who works really hard, no matter how hard you work, you need something to kind of refresh your brain, right? I've got a wife, I've got a kid on the way, so I've got to have other hobbies outside of work. And I work again insane hours, right? I've got a global team. I work something like 80 or 100 hours a week, consistently in and out. So long work. But yeah, I've got kind of three or four main hobbies. I work out a ton. I read kind of. I'm trying to read all the classics right now, the classic literature that I never read in high school or college. Big poker player. That's like usually most Friday nights for me. So let's talk about poker specifically because I think it might be relevant to a little bit more relevant to your audience and more accessible. So firstly, I play poker for kind of three reasons. Number one, it's social, right? I'm at a table with a bunch of other people from all walks of life. There could be CEOs at the table, there could be homeless people, there are people from all walks of life, incredibly diverse from racial, gender, ethnic, socioeconomic status, education level, right? One of my good buddies, the poker player at the poker table, he spent 20 years in prison. Perfectly, like he made some mistakes when he was younger, has kind of come around and is a productive member of society. And that's a very different person than my background, but it's wonderful to sit around with Alf and like have that, just chat and have a beer. So it's very social. I like that. Number two, it's competitive. I like competing in almost every aspect of life. Even if I suck at something, I'm a very slow runner. I still run with my running club and I'm always the back of the pack, but it's fun. Um, Thirdly, it involves good decision making. I like that kind of risk-based decision making. Poker, you could have the best hand possible and you could just get unlucky, right? Pocket aces, which is the best hand in poker, loses all the time. In fact, it loses exactly 20% of the time, which is a large number, right? The best possible hand still losing 1 out of 5 times. And then finally, it relies on mathematical decision making. Good poker players at elite levels, or even anybody who gets beyond the amateur level, is pretty good at understanding the maths, the probabilities, the probability trees. I'm a theoretical math major. This like peaks one part of my brain that I absolutely love. So you combine all of that together, I get to be like competitive. I'm good enough that tend to be a consistent winner. I've actually made a ton of money and could probably make a job out of it if I wanted. And I just get to be compete in Friday in a low risk setting. At the end of the day, even if I lose, I lost my own money. Whereas when if I'm making decisions at IdeaScale, good or bad decisions, that impacts, hundreds of people, my employees, their families, their husbands, their wives, their kids. Um, their communities and my customers, obviously, which then impacts millions of people. So it's fun to make decisions in a low risk setting where, look, if you make a good decision, you make some money and it's fun. If you make a bad decision, at least it's your own money you lost and you didn't cause, damage or catastrophic loss to anyone else. Much lower pressure.
I love that. And you'd spend money to go out Friday entertainment anyway. So it's like, I love that.
Beers are free at most casinos, so
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so we're gonna wrap it up now, but since our show is called What It Takes, I'd love to know, what do you think it really takes to be a business owner today?
I'll highlight two skills that I think are incredibly critical to own or be a senior person at any meaningful business. Number one, actually, yeah, number one is working really, really hard. I think people underestimate how hard business owners need to work to be successful. And that's true whether you're running a restaurant, whether you're running a small construction business, whether you're running a multi-million dollar company like IdeaScale. Leaders of businesses and owners of businesses work their butts off, and that is underappreciated. Very few people just luck into running a super successful restaurant. There's a lot of grind that went out in the background between getting the Yelp reviews right, between advertising your business, between making great menus and talking to your customers and building relationships. So that's number one, working really hard in ways that are often underappreciated. It's like the duck analogy, right? The duck is paddling very heavily under the water. The second is developing your own skills. So as a business owner, you've started a business, you're running it, it's going well, but you need to be kind of improve your skills continuously. And there's ways you can do that, whether through formal education, right? Like I, for example, take a bunch of courses online on Coursera almost every month because it's always important that I'm developing new skills that will help me advance my business. And that's especially true at an ownership level because owners make an impact on their businesses disproportionately relative to the average employee. And it's not just because your title is the owner, it's because you're the one who cares the most. And so if you're not building yourself and your own human capital up, that's going to negatively reflect on your business over the long run.
Yeah, I agree with both of those. And I also agree with the statement is there's no non-hardworking business owner. I've never not seen a business owner that doesn't work hard. Absolutely agree with that. I haven't always seen a business owner pursue personal growth and professional growth. So I think that is that's great advice there and a good observation as well. So thank you for sharing that. If somebody listening wanted to take the next step with you, what should they do? How do they reach out? How do they find you?
Sure. So for the company, our website is IdeaScale.com. Our software is completely free for organizations less than 100 people. So if you are an individual or a small business owner, go check out our software. No downloads required. It takes less than 30 seconds to use online and sign up and all that set up. And it's a great way to make your organization more innovative. If you're a large organization, please come be a paying customer. We're best in class at what we do. For me personally, the best way to reach me is on LinkedIn. My name is Nick Jain. I'm almost always the first search result anywhere in the world under my name. And I respond to 100% of messages. So feel free to DM me.
That's awesome. Nick, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your valuable insights. It's really been a fascinating discussion on the future of innovation and leadership. You are the CEO of IdeaScale, found at IdeaScale.com. To our listeners, make sure to subscribe and catch our next episode. And as always, thanks for tuning in to What It Takes.
Thanks so much for having me, Jamie.
This podcast is brought to you by Seeker Solution. Are you a business owner feeling overwhelmed? We can help. Head over to seekersolution.com to schedule a call today. Would you or someone you know like to be featured on this podcast? Our applications are now open. Apply today at seekersolution.com and click on the podcast link to get started.